Hey, Michael with XForcePC. I want to talk to you about our newest system. Haven't totally settled on a name. Some proposed names that include the ridiculous machine, the way over the top machine, you don't need this machine. And I think what I've settled on is the total overkill machine. That may not be completely accurate for everyone, but for many people, this machine is kind of overkill. But, sometimes you want what you want. I have a friend that has a Ferrari, and he does not need that Ferrari. But he wants that Ferrari because he can have it, and that's what he wants. And so that's sort of what this system represents, is more about what you want than maybe necessarily what you need. What we've done is we've thrown in the kitchen sink, so to speak, and giving you the best of the best. So we'll start out here talking just about the case, quite simply. And this is the empty case. I'm going to show you a built system here in just a moment. But you'll notice it's kind of attractive here on this DX Racer desk. It kind of goes with it. This is not a DX Racer computer. This is definitely not that. But I thought it went nicely with the DX Racer table and chair that I'm sitting in. So I decided to do this video right here. So this case is a pretty high-end case. It has really nice cooling and really nice design. So let me show you some of that. First of all, behind the front here, which comes off with relative ease compared to most front panels, you'll notice that we have three pretty good-sized fans, and we have that covered with a filter that's held on with a magnet, so it's very easily removable. So you get nice airflow coming in the front, and you notice the air kind of goes in around the edges here of this cover, especially right here in this grill. So that's how the air gets in. And it's all controlled by a little control board inside that manages all of the fan speeds equally based on what the motherboard is telling it, because you hook up the fan controller to the motherboard's one of the motherboard's fan headers, and that's how it tells the fan system how hot the system is, so how fast to run the fans. You'll also notice here on the inside there's this foam lining, and this is on all of the panels, and what that does is cuts down on noise. So this is noise insulation. And again, you'll find that on all the panels. So that's kind of nice. And so, maybe once every 3 months or so, you'll want to pop the front cover off and, clean this fan off, this filter off. Turn it to the side here. And we have a nice window in the side. Again, this is an empty case, probably a good bit of glare on that right now. But one thing that allows you to access is there's another filter down here. So the air for the power supply goes in the bottom of the case and of course passes through this and then comes right out the back. So the heat from the power supply in and out does not mix with the rest of the case. And it comes in the bottom and goes straight out the back of the power supply. So that's kind of nice. And then of course this back panel here has some noise insulation. Now unfortunately you can't noise insulate the window, but this is still a very quiet system. So that's some of the highlights of the case. Up here on the top, you do have two USB 3.0s, two USB 2.0s, and that's kind of nice. And then we have some nice ventilation along the edge here, and that will allow our heat to come out the top. And I'll be showing you that in just a minute, why these are important. So come back, and we will talk about the internal components. Hey, I'm back here with the total overkill machine, which I believe is what I'm going to call it. And we've got its skin removed essentially, and so you can kind of see some of the internal components, and we'll talk about that. First of all, here in the front, you'll notice we have this filter. And that's kind of important because you want to keep dust from building up in your system, and you want to occasionally change that filter. It's held on with magnets, so you just pull out on these magnets and then lift up, and then the filter comes right off, and I'll just set that to the side. So now you can see those three large fans, which are controlled based on the temperature. So if the temperature goes up, it communicates that to the fan controller, and the fan speed up. And that's really all we've got much going on here in the front. Oh. Turn it to the side. Give you a little look inside. So inside, well, we've got a bit of total overkill. We have a GTX 980 Ti graphics card, currently the fastest graphics card you can buy. And that has, again, 6 gigabytes on it, the fastest single chip video card. And that'll allow you to run pretty much any game at any resolution with everything cranked. Maybe at 4K. You know, you might want to add a second one possibly if you're really, really, really extreme. Above that, we have the i7 6700K processor, which you see these 2 hoses running to the top of it. That's because it's being cooled by a high-end Corsair water cooler. So we're able to overclock it to 4.4 gigahertz. We could probably be more aggressive with that, but we try to keep it sort of, you know, tame. An extra 0.1 or 0.2 gigahertz isn't necessarily worth the possibility of instability. Now, under 100% load, the CPU usually stays around 60 degrees Celsius. And that's good because 90 is kind of the number you really need to stay under. And 100 is kind of the ultimate red line. So even with all the cores maxed completely out, you know, we're only at about 60 degrees Celsius. So that's nice. And then the fact that the water cooler radiator right up here, you can see it, this kind of light colored area here, that's the radiator, and then there's fans up on top. And the fans take air from inside the case and blow it upwards and through the radiator and out the top of the case. So the nice thing is none of the heat from your processor ever mixes inside the case because it goes into this radiator up here and then just goes straight out the top. So you don't have to worry about any of that extra heat in your case. This system also supports up to 64 gigs of RAM, so since it's total overkill, we put 64 gigs in it. Why not? So we've got 4 16 gig DIMMs, or sticks of RAM, and they're running DDR4 3000. The kind of the standard for new systems right now is DDR4 2133 megahertz. So we decided, why not go to 3000? So we've got 4 sticks of that running the XMP Profile 1. If you know anything about memory, that's kind of a high performance profile. And the memory runs at a little higher voltage, runs at 1.35 volts, whereas, you know, typical memory would run at 1.2 volts. So it runs at 1.35 to support that higher speed. Continuing with the total overkill aspect, our boot drive is a 1 terabyte M.2 SSD. And M.2 is significant because M.2 is the port that it plugs into, but that connects directly to the PCI Express bus. And that gives us the extra headroom to not have to worry about bumping up against the limitations of SATA, or serial ATA. All previous SSDs and hard drives for the last 10 years, for the most part, have been SATA, or serial ATA. And the limit on that is right around 500 megabytes per second. And we're seeing SSDs actually run into that cap. And actually, they're being governed by it because they can't go as fast as they want to go. Well, M.2 gives you orders of magnitude more bandwidth. And so that's the significance of M.2 because it hooks directly to PCI Express. And that's this little white strip right in here about the size of a stick of gum. That's the M.2 SATA. So it's just a little thing about that long. Now, continuing with the total overkill theme, we have a conventional spinning hard drive that is not the boot drive. It's an archive drive, and it's made by Seagate, and the purpose of this drive is large amounts of storage for not a whole lot of money. This is an 8 terabyte hard drive. Yes, you have that right. An 8 terabyte hard drive. Single drive holding 8 terabytes. And so what an archive drive means is it's not a super high performance drive. Now that doesn't mean it's slow. It just means that performance isn't the priority. The priority is archival. So be very reliable and don't cost a ton of money. And so on this drive, this is where you would put things like copies of your Steam library, videos, music, pictures, just junk, whatever you want to put over there. Copies of, make backups of your documents over there. You can really use it for just about anything and not have to worry about filling it up, because if you fill up 8 terabytes, well, you've definitely accomplished something, because that's a whole lot of data. I don't even know how many movies that is in high def, but it's hundreds if not thousands. What have we not talked about? The motherboard. So the motherboard's a high-end board from Gigabyte. It's from their G1 gaming line. And some notable things is it has metal PCI Express slots. These are the X16 slots that the video card plugs into. And it does support up to 2 graphics cards in SLI. And so you could add a second 980 Ti if you so desire. And it also supports 3-way crossfire, but we really don't do a whole lot with crossfire. That's an AMD technology for multi-GPU. So the other thing it actually has dual M.2 connectors, slots, whatever you want to call them. So that M.2 1 terabyte SSD that we put in this one, you actually have a spot to put a second one if for whatever reason down the road you need to put another one in, it's there. Some other notable things that we've talked about before, but we do have USB 3.1, which is the red. We also have USB Type-C, which is a little hard to see, I'm sure. But that's the new universal connector you're going to start seeing on phones. And the great advantage of it is it's reversible. You don't have to plug it in one particular direction. You can plug it in this way or this way. And so if you're fumbling with your phone at night, you don't have to worry about which direction you're plugging the little connector in. We have USB 3.0, of course, and then we also have some USB 2.0s, but those are on the front. Of course, USB 3.1 and 3.0 is backwards compatible to USB 2.0, so there's really nothing to worry about if you don't think this is enough USB 2.0s for you. We also have a kind of a unique network interface card. It's a killer NIC standing for network interface card. And what it does is it does some packet prioritization. So let's say you're downloading a file or uploading a file to the internet or from the internet, and you're also playing a game online. It's going to look at those packets and it's going to automatically prioritize your gaming packets above your download or your upload packets. May not mean much to you, but you have it, it's there, it's nice to have. And it will prioritize automatically your most important network traffic or packets ahead of less important ones, so that in theory you have a lag-free gaming experience if you're doing gaming online. I think that pretty much covers the motherboard. We'll mention one more thing. It has some Sound Blaster software that comes with it. Which is kind of nice, especially if you're kind of into sound. I'm not a huge sound guy, other than I want my games to have good sound. But it has a nice amplifier built in. It has isolated capacitors and amplifier from the rest of the board. So it's hard to see, but if you look down here, there's this little line that goes across. And what they're saying is this is a dividing line here. All the audio is on this side of the line, and everything else is on this side of the line. And what that helps to prevent is any type of interference or buzzing or humming or whatever you might pick up, especially if you've got a real sensitive ear. So what Gigabyte's saying is, look, we've taken the PCB printed circuit board, we've drawn a line and divided it, and even though it's all on one board, there is a definite division here between the audio and the rest of the board. And when the system's on, that actually kind of lights up to sort of emphasize that fact. I think that pretty much covers everything. If you have any questions, send me an email, michael@XForcePC.com. Wait a minute. I did just think of one more thing. We haven't talked about the power supply. So the power supply, I'll move the motherboard out of the way. 1,000 watts. Should have mentioned that before. Trying to keep the glare off of it. And it's also a component power supply. So what does component mean? Component means that the cable, these cables are already hooked up, but these are the cables you're always going to use. It has an 8-pin power connector for the CPU, as well as a 24-pin off the top of my head for the motherboard. And then all the other cables are optional. You can plug them in. You have 6 plugs here where you can plug things in. So what that means is, by having these cables separate, if you're not using all these cables, you don't have to have all these inside your case. You can say, well, you know, we're only going to need this PCI Express one, and we're going to need this one here, to hook the fans up. So all of these, you just set to the side and you don't actually hook them up. But they're there if you need them later. Let's say you want to add a second graphics card later. Well, you have the extra PCI Express cables to hook that up. So when we set this system up, you have these cables that are already baked in, plus 2 more that we use. One of which is to power the graphics card. The other one is to power the fan control system, the system that just controls all the speed of all the different fans. And then you have actually there's 2 in here. They're bundled together. 3, 4, 5 different cables that are just extras that we don't even put inside the case. Helps with airflow, helps with clutter. Why have a whole bunch of cables in there you're not actually using? So we'll send those along with the system. You'll also notice this system doesn't have an optical drive. So if you're an X-Plane person, you'll want to make sure you have the digital download of X-Plane. If you're Microsoft Flight Sim, you want the Steam edition. It only costs $25. It's available via digital download. Of course, you can always plug in a USB optical drive, but with this system, we're kind of phasing out optical drives, I guess. You're going to start to see that happening now that the internet has gotten so fast and people are able to download games and content over the internet. So do be aware, there is no optical drive, but the other thing too is we'll give you a copy of Windows on a flash drive. So Microsoft now does offer Windows on a flash drive. And that's good because it installs a whole lot faster, at least in theory. I actually have them on order. I haven't tried it yet, but my assumption is they'll install a whole lot faster off of a flash drive. And easier to store, and you don't have to have an optical drive sitting there in your system just in case you have to reinstall Windows. Even Microsoft Office is distributed over the internet these days, so the need for an optical drive is just really gone down. Okay, so now I've covered everything with the system. Have any questions, email me, michael@xforcepc.com. Again, michael@xforcepc.com.